I was driving a school bus through downtown Richmond in a pretty shady neighborhood. It's something that I did once a week. For 3 years after college, I worked at a school for children with special needs. And in the afternoon, we had an after-school program for kids who didn't have special needs, but they had been removed from the public schools mostly due to behavioral issues. So they were typical kids with severe behavioral issues. Once a week after that after-school program, I would drive them home. This was before iPhones and GPS and all that, so I would have sitting next to me MapQuest directions. Rather than following the MapQuest directions, what I would typically do is I would have one particular student, I'll tell you her real name, we'll call her Mo, who was sitting behind me. She was about 15 years old, and Mo would tell me, because she rode the bus every day, how to get from house to house in the quickest, most expedient way. Mo is one of these people, you've met people like this, who if she had been born in a different household, in a different community, she would be running things today, right? I mean, she'd be on her way to be the CEO of something. She'd sit behind me, she'd direct me. One night we're driving, and she asked me to turn on the radio, and I do. And I let her pick the radio station, which I didn't typically do. And a song came on the radio that I had heard before. Some of you will remember it. I'd heard the song, but I'd never really listened to the lyrics in depth. We're driving, and I'm listening to the song, and for the first time, when a particular lyric came on, I didn't hear the man on the radio singing it, but I heard Mo's voice from behind me singing it. And here's the line. I'll edit it. Let your blank hit the floor and let your body steal the show. And when I heard her sing that, something inside of me broke just a little bit. Because here is what I knew. I knew that night I'd drive back to the suburbs, to the community where I was volunteering as a youth minister. And when I drove back to that community, I knew that the students in that youth ministry would be listening to the same song. In fact, they were the ones downloading it on iTunes and making it popular. I knew that they would be listening to the same song, but what I also knew is that while they had that song casting a vision for them of what a relationship between a boyfriend and a girlfriend looked like, while they had that song casting a vision for them of what it looked like to have a relationship with a man and how men were supposed to treat women, while they would have that vision cast for them of what that looked like, they would also have other men in their lives that would be casting a different vision. Many of them also had strong fathers, but if they didn't have a strong father, they had a strong brother, they had a strong uncle. And they would have that song telling them this is what a relationship needs to look like, but they would also have other men saying it's actually not what it has to look like. You actually don't have to do that. And you actually can find a man who respects you for more than just your body. And I also knew that if those kids in that community got tangled up in a bad relationship and they ended up pregnant or they ended up with an STD, I knew that those kids in that suburb would have a safety net. But what about Mo? Mo had bounced around from foster care to foster care. If she had a consistent male in her life, it was not a male to be trusted. All she had was what she was hearing on the radio and seeing on TV, painting a picture for her of what that kind of relationship looked like. Imagine if your kids, or imagine if you are a kid, if the only thing you had painting a picture of what a boyfriend-girlfriend relationship looked like was the media. What would you think you needed to do with your body if you're a 15-year-old girl? And I also knew that if Mo got pregnant, there was no safety net for Mo. I mean, you wonder how babies end up having babies and end up on the streets. Driving home that night, I realized I'd made the right decision by turning the song off, but I also realized that maybe that wasn't enough. I realized that yes, it was probably fine for me to listen to that song. Look, I like the beat and the lyrics. Like I'm not really listening to the lyrics. I'm just listening to the beat. It's good to work out to. So between me and God, it's a green light. It's fine for me to listen to that. But I also began to realize that by downloading things like that, by making them popular, I am complicit in a vision that is being cast, that is destroying people for whom Christ died, that is leading people down a path that it leads them to a life of misery, that is causing the weak in particular and the vulnerable in my community to stumble. Was it fine for me? Maybe. But it wasn't good for them. and I can't be a part of something that's affecting my fellow brothers and sisters. So for you, in that blank, can you run that through both of those lenses? Not just how does it affect me and God, but how does this affect the people that are around me?